Let me take you back to a time when things were simpler. The Power Rangers were iconic. Pokemon fever was at a high, and I grew up in the thick of it. When you're young, you get dragged around to your parents' social outings. My dad has a friend from a local band. His name is Kip, and we go over to his house to watch the Super Bowl and other sporting events. His name is Kip Carmen, and he is a Long Island legend. Coincidentally, his house is where my very own N64 legend would unfold. While the grown-ups would watch football in the living room, all the kids would be upstairs playing video games. On one fateful Super Bowl party, I somehow got ushered upstairs with them. On the screen, they were playing a Final Fantasy game on PlayStation. To this day, I'm not sure which Final Fantasy it was, but the image of a character running up a snowy mountain lives rent-free in my mind. At some point, they switched to the Nintendo 64 and put in a little gem called Star Fox 64. Watching them play, I was captivated. They were flying a space jet, shooting down enemy pilots while highly enthused radios were coming in from all over. Since I was younger and it wasn't my house, I didn't exactly get past the controller to try it out. That is, until everyone was called down for food. At that point, somebody passed me the controller, and I had my very first experience playing not just Star Fox 64, but also the Nintendo 64. And it was amazing. As one might expect, my Christmas list for that year was very light. A Nintendo 64 console. And boy, did my parents deliver. They purchased me a Nintendo 64 along with my very first two games, Pokemon Snap and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. My dad and I stayed up the bulk of that Christmas playing Pokemon Snap, and we were hooked. My dad isn't exactly a gamer, so for him to be that into a video game was really testament to how good the game was. I remember going into Blockbuster, a video rental store. In Blockbuster, there were kiosks where you could bring your cartridge of Pokemon Snap and print out the pictures that you snapped in your file. I had the toughest photo of a Kangaskhan, where she runs up to the camera and makes like she's about to attack Todd, the photographer. In the background, you can see a couple Pidgeys flying away. I always wanted to bring in my game and print that photo, but I never got to. This shared experience with my father was so meaningful, and it's still a game that my dad and I can play to this day. That night, however, I got to experience one of the greatest games of the Nintendo 64 life cycle, Zelda: Ocarina of Time. A lot of gamers today look at gaming as sort of a social thing where you play online and share or stream your experience. Well, at the time, this was the complete opposite. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time and later Majora's Mask were sort of a safe space for me to retreat to. I used to go upstairs, lean back in the recliner, and get absorbed into the game. The many melodies of the environments and the tunes of the ocarina perfectly complemented the heartfelt narrative and charm of Link and the NPCs. Moments like the passing of the Deku Tree, Darunia embracing Link as a sworn brother, Link riding Epona out of Lon Lon Ranch when the evil Ingo tries to trap him in, and so many more moments just like these live readily replayable in my mind. The experience was truly special. Of course, I don't think I made it much further than the water temple at the time, but to this day, I find myself playing and leisuring through Ocarina as sort of a healing experience. And Majora's Mask? Well, let's save that for another day. Another game that had this effect on me was Banjo-Tooie, an incredible game. I know so many people have a greater fondness for Banjo-Kazooie, the first game, for its simpler nature, and I understand that. But for me, Tooie pulled at my heartstrings. The Jiggies, the main collectible in the game, were centered around the characters' real problems. Like you'd get a Jiggy if you could reunite Jolly Roger and Merry Maggie. Or if you fed the cavemen nasty burgers and fries and provided them warmth by lighting their campfire, you were awarded a Jiggy. To really signify the impact of the narrative, at the beginning of the game, Gruntilda kills Bottles, a very important character from the first game. And to top it off, moments later, she does the same thing to King Jingaling. Nothing remotely as dark as this happens in the first game. But these dark moments are couched in Rareware's signature British humor. Kazooie is an incredibly tongue-in-cheek character, poking fun at everyone in the game, name-calling them Goggle Boy, Bottle Brain, etc. The polar bear from the first game gets fat and lazy, and you have to ground pound his chest because he choked on an entire fish. I mean, heck, Grunty's weapon of choice is called the Suckometer. How's that for a weapon? The characters make the derpiest sounds while they are talking too. It's such a good juxtaposition to how serious the game actually is. The comedy of it all was pivotal in humanizing these animal creatures and keeping the game fun and me on my toes. It doesn't hurt that the game has a banger soundtrack that slaps to this day. But what separates this level of comedy from something like Conker's Bad Fur Day is how technically precise everything was in the game. There are so many unique movesets added onto what was already accomplishable in Banjo-Kazooie. It has about twice as many moves, and when you add to the fact that Banjo and Kazooie can split up from each other and that they each get their own unique moveset, there's just such a complexity to the experience, and I really love it. It makes me feel more powerful as the bear and the bird. While these are some of the best single-player games that the Nintendo 64 has to offer, we just can't talk about Nintendo 64 memories without talking about some good old-fashioned multiplayer. If you wanted local couch co-op, well boy did the Nintendo 64 have you covered. 4 controller ports native to the console, and a wealth of diverse multiplayer games. If you didn't have these, well, your library simply wasn't complete. Some of these multiplayer games fall under the category I like to call party games. Games that anyone can play and be good at. GoldenEye 007 is a perfect example of a party game because GoldenEye has auto-aim and starts everyone on the same playing field with a simple pistol. Of course, screen cheating was very much a thing, but that just came with the territory. Mario Party was relatively player-friendly because it only takes 20 coins and some lucky dice rolls to get a star. But earning the coins in the minigames could be a tough time for the uninitiated. Speaking of minigames, Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2s were iconic. The mini-games in the Stadium games were more or less micro games, but ones that anyone could play. Mostly. Clefairy Says is a memory game, where you have to repeat inputs from the instructor that get progressively harder as the lesson goes on. Clear Cut Challenge is a wood chopping game, with Scyther and Pincer and Scissor, where you have to time the chop on the log. One of my favorites is Delibird Delivery, sort of a Santa's Workshop minigame, where you bring gifts of different values from one end of the factory line to the other in order to get a high score. Even Pikachu-themed Nintendo 64s. These were so awesome. Super Smash Bros. Is deceptively not a party game. If you play someone in Super Smash Bros. Who knows the game, they can easily dodge attacks and land powerful ones. The inclusion of items is supposed to offset this, but even the items have a layer of required knowledge and skill. In order to pull off a home run with the home run bat, for example, you have to do a smash attack, something a common gamer might not know. Knowing which Pokemon do what in the Pokeballs also serves as a major advantage. If you know that Onix drops rocks down the middle of the screen, you can stay on the left. Same thing with Snorlax. If you know that Magikarp does nothing, then you know not to count on it. Mario Kart 64 is another game that people think they can just jump in and play, but there is most certainly a skill requisite when it comes to playing multiplayer. Advanced driving techniques like boost starts and drift boosts give skilled players a significant margin by which they can get ahead in the races. The roster also favors Toad, Yoshi, and Peach, the lightweight characters. I had a friend in college that refused to play as any character other than Toad or Yoshi. I still managed to compete with him using Donkey Kong or Mario, but it was usually to my detriment. The game offsets the skill requirement with item distribution that favors last and later place players. Successive blue shells are a first place player's nightmare, but that player is still securing a top place position. If you're in 7th or 8th, you probably won't make it much further than 7th or 8th. The true test of pure, unadulterated racing skill is of course the iconic F-Zero X. There are other great racing games on the console, but F-Zero X happens to be mine and many others' favorites. This is a game I have few to no multiplayer memories in, because no one could even come close to my times back in the day, so they wouldn't even want to play the game. F-Zero X differs from Mario Kart 64 in that your machine could retire and not finish the race. Because the machines go so wicked fast, not only is that speed really felt when playing, it really puts a novice player in jeopardy. Boosting comes at the cost of a player's health too, so it's something that has to be done strategically. The AI in the Grand Prix modes were my true competition, especially on Expert and Master difficulties. Master difficulty is outrageously challenging, even for a skilled player of the game. That's why it's not a prerequisite to rolling the credits and beating the game. One strategy I adopted when the races got tough was to try and take out my rivals with side dashes, and if I didn't land the attack, I'd restart the race at the cost of my own machine. The reason for doing this is if the racer doesn't finish, they get 0 points in the next race. So it's a really good way to try and make up some lost ground. F-Zero X is a game that I still play to this day. There's an endless debate about F-Zero X versus F-Zero GX, but it's really not a debate. Both are phenomenal games in their own rights, and you really have to play both, especially if you're a gamer. The Nintendo 64 is truly a special console, and one that I am still making memories with to this day. Recently, I hosted 2 community competitions over on my channel, one centered around getting medals in Star Fox 64, and another around time trials in Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, a game I had never played prior for the console. I also grinded for PBs in all cups on F-Zero X, even accomplishing a no-death run of the entire game as one of my favorite racers, Twin Norita. Castlevania 64 was a game that got dunked on by the internet a decade ago, but I found myself playing and loving regardless, especially as a 3D action-adventure Zelda fan. I love this console so much. I've taken it with me from airport to airport. The GameCube may have more polished gems. The Switch may be more accessible. The Wii U might be more unique, but no console will ever truly be as special to me as the Nintendo 64.